It was a January morning in 2025 when Usha Vance stepped onto the Capitol steps, the winter sun casting a soft glow over Washington, D.C. Dressed in an elegant deep blue silk saree, she wasn't just making an appearance, she was making a statement. Behind her composed smile was a story of sacrifice, a tale of a woman who left behind a promising legal career for the unpredictable world of politics. At 39, Usha had taken a path few could have predicted. From Yale Law School to becoming America's first Hindu second lady, her journey was nothing short of extraordinary. The daughter of Indian immigrants who built a life in California, she had carved out an impressive career at Munger, Tolas, and Olson, tackling complex civil cases. Her colleagues admired her brilliance. She didn't lose a single case in her first 3 years. But when JD's political career took off, she had to make a choice that would change everything. Maria Rodriguez, one of her closest colleagues, remembered how difficult that decision was. Walking away from the firm wasn't just about leaving a job. It meant saying goodbye to cases she had poured her heart into. These weren't just any cases. Many involved issues she deeply believed in. One in particular stood out: protecting the voting rights of minorities in rural areas. It was a cause close to her heart, something she had been passionate about since clerking for Chief Justice Roberts. Letting go wasn't easy, but both she and JD knew this was just the beginning of a much bigger journey. Trading the courtroom for the campaign trail was no smooth transition. Usha had to find a way to balance her Indian heritage with the traditions of American politics. She figured out how to blend her vegetarian Hindu lifestyle with Ohio's meat and potatoes culture at campaign events, learned when to be visible and when to step back, and mastered the art of being supportive while still holding on to her identity. Her sacrifices didn't stop at her career. As JD's political presence grew, so did the public scrutiny. Every outfit, every appearance, every word she said or didn't say was analyzed. When critics on the right attacked their interracial marriage, she stayed quiet and held her head high. Instead of wasting time on the noise, she focused on raising their 3 children, making sure they embraced both their Hindu and Catholic backgrounds. Things got even more complicated when JD became Trump's running mate. Her background in progressive law didn't always align with the administration's views on diversity, views she had once fought to protect. But she handled the challenge with quiet grace. At private events, staff members noticed how she skillfully steered conversations away from policy clashes and toward common ground. At home, she turned their space into a melting pot of cultures, hosting dinners where spicy Indian dishes sat side by side with Midwestern comfort food. The toll of balancing it all became more obvious in ways only those close to her would notice. Friends saw that she had stopped attending the legal conferences she used to love. Her name quietly disappeared from the pro bono cases she had once championed. The sharp legal mind that had once commanded federal courtrooms now chose her words carefully before speaking in public. Even though she stayed out of the spotlight, Usha was never just a quiet spectator. Behind the scenes, she played a key role in shaping JD's journey, helping him prepare for debates, fine-tuning his message, and building connections with communities that might have otherwise been out of reach. Her legal writings, once focused on constitutional law in the pages of the Harvard Law Review, gradually shifted toward political communication and public service. Now, as she steps into the role of Second Lady, curiosity about her has only grown. As the wife of Donald Trump's running mate, JD Vance, Usha is set to become the first Indian-origin Second Lady of the United States. But what does her silence truly mean? Will she use her platform to speak up for immigrants in American politics? How will she reconcile her progressive legal background with the policies of an administration that often seems at odds with her past work? The way she answers these questions could reshape not just her own story, but also the way Americans view political partnerships today. In Washington, people often say that the quietest voices can carry the most weight. Usha Vance's silence speaks volumes about the cost of power and the delicate balance between personal beliefs and political realities. While her sacrifices tell one part of the story, JD's own past reveals a different kind of struggle, one marked by hardship, survival, and an unlikely rise to power. In the worn-down neighborhoods of Middletown, Ohio, where factory smokestacks reached into the gray sky, JD Vance learned about survival the hard way. It was 1994, and at just 10 years old, he sat frozen in the back of a police car, watching his mother being handcuffed after a drug-fueled breakdown, where she threatened to take both their lives. In that moment, the back seat of the cruiser felt oddly safe, a brief escape from the chaos that was his everyday reality. Outside, the town that had once thrived with steelworkers and honest labor now seemed hollow, filled with fading dreams and addiction. His mother, once a nursing student with a promising future, had been consumed by heroin. That meant empty refrigerators, long nights wondering when she'd come home, and an endless stream of broken promises. His older sister, Lindsay, became his first true protector. 4 years his senior and wise beyond her years, she made sure he never went hungry, sneaking him food when their mother forgot to buy groceries. Even while juggling shifts at the local diner, she always found time to help him with his homework. But more than that, she shielded him from the parade of troubled men who passed through their lives like shadows, never staying long but always leaving scars. Through it all, Lindsay was his steady anchor. But it was their grandmother, lovingly called Mama, who would truly change the course of his life. A tough-as-nails woman with a .44 Magnum by her bed and a sailor's vocabulary, she gave him more than just a place to stay. She gave him stability. With a voice rough from years of cigarettes and hard living, she would remind him over and over he was not going to end up like them. Her small house on Central Avenue became JD's safe haven, a place where homework wasn't optional and excuses didn't get him anywhere. Under Mama's strict rules and home-cooked meals, he started to picture a different kind of future for himself. While his friends were busy with video games, JD buried himself in books about history and politics, feeding a growing curiosity about the world beyond Middletown. His grades improved, but the weight of his past never fully lifted. It followed him like a shadow, making him an expert at coming up with excuses for why his mom never showed up to parent-teacher conferences. At 19, the Marines became his escape route. Leaving behind the struggles of Middletown, he stepped into the structured world of boot camp, where discipline and order replaced the chaos of his childhood. The military didn't just give him direction, it gave him a sense of belonging, a family built on shared goals rather than shared pain. His time in Iraq, working in public affairs for the Marine Corps, taught him lessons in leadership and resilience that no classroom ever could. When he eventually landed at Ohio State University, the contrast between his old life and his new one was impossible to ignore. While most students his age were focused on parties, dating, and late-night adventures, JD was in survival mode, juggling multiple jobs just to keep the lights on. The memories of his childhood struggles never let him forget how close he had come to being trapped in that cycle. But he didn't just get by, he thrived. With sheer determination, he powered through his political science degree in under 2 years, proving that even when the odds were against him, he could push forward and win. Yale Law School felt like a dream too far-fetched to come true, until it did. The same drive that helped him escape his past fueled him through the halls where future presidents and Supreme Court justices had once studied. Sitting in constitutional law classes, dressed in second-hand suits and pulling late nights in the library, he still heard the echoes of Middletown's sirens in his mind. JD's story could have been just another tale of escaping poverty. But instead of running from his past, he started using it to understand the bigger picture of America's struggles. His experiences became a bridge between two worlds, the tough streets of his childhood and the polished corridors of power he now walked. He carried the lessons of survival with him, realizing that true resilience wasn't just about leaving home, it was about remembering why he had to leave in the first place. But it wasn't just his past that shaped his future. Fate had a way of stepping in at just the right moment. In a Yale Law School classroom, J.D. Vance was about to meet someone who would change everything he thought he knew about love, belonging, and what it meant to find common ground across different worlds. It happened in classroom 127, where some of the country's sharpest legal minds honed their skills. J.D., sitting in his worn blazer, still felt out of place among the polished students around him. Then, Usha Chilukuri raised her hand and everything shifted. Their first meeting in Professor Amy Chua's constitutional law class sparked a connection neither of them saw coming. Usha, the daughter of successful Indian immigrant doctors from California, carried herself with an effortless confidence, her sharp mind always ready to challenge traditional ideas. JD, still carrying the weight of his Appalachian roots, was drawn to her boldness and the way she never backed down from a debate. As they spent more time together in study sessions tucked away in the quiet corners of Sterling Library, their conversations revealed unexpected similarities. Usha spoke about her grandfather, a man who had fought against caste discrimination in India to become a respected teacher. JD shared stories of Mama and her relentless determination to give him a shot at a better life in Middletown. Despite coming from opposite sides of the world, they both understood the pressure of family expectations and the hunger to succeed. Their early days of dating unfolded against the backdrop of Yale's deep history. Their first kiss happened on the steps of Sterling Memorial Library. They debated constitutional theory over coffee at Book Trader Cafe, and their shared passion for public service law brought them even closer. But despite the intellectual connection, the differences in their backgrounds presented challenges they had to navigate together. JD's first dinner with Usha's family in San Diego was an eye-opener. The spices were intense, the customs unfamiliar, and the setting felt worlds apart from his upbringing in Ohio. Her parents welcomed him warmly, but he sensed a quiet hesitation, an unspoken question of whether their daughter's boyfriend, with his rough Appalachian past, could truly fit into their world. Back home, JD found himself wondering the same thing. His own family was tight-knit, and he wasn't sure how they would react to someone from such a different background. Both of them had to confront the reality of bridging two cultures, uncertain of how their families would accept their relationship. A turning point came in 2013, when they co-organized a discussion group called Social Decline in White America. The conversations became a way to explore their cultural differences while also finding common ground. Usha shared her perspectives on immigrant success stories, while JD offered raw reflections on the struggles of working-class white communities. Their contrasting viewpoints made for powerful discussions, drawing in students from all backgrounds. As they tackled tough topics together, their bond deepened. During this time, they supported each other in ways that mattered most. When JD struggled with feelings of not belonging during job interviews, Usha helped him refine his presentation, making sure he didn't lose himself in the process. When she faced discrimination in the legal field, JD was by her side, always ready to stand up for her. Their love became more than just a personal connection. It was a partnership built on mutual understanding and resilience. Their 2014 wedding in Kentucky was a true blend of cultures. Hindu priests in vibrant orange robes stood beside Baptist ministers in dark suits. Curry dishes shared table space with bourbon-glazed ham. Bhangra dancers twirled to upbeat rhythms while bluegrass musicians played in the background. The ceremony seamlessly wove together Sanskrit prayers and Bible readings, creating something entirely their own. Over the years, their home reflected this beautiful fusion. Usha introduced JD to vegetarian cooking and meditation, while he shared Appalachian storytelling and country music. Their children grew up with bedtime stories that mixed Hindu myths with down-home wisdom, a perfect blend of their heritages. But their biggest accomplishment wasn't just in how they blended cultures. It was in proving that love can transcend social boundaries. Their story broke stereotypes about interracial marriage and challenged assumptions about the values of conservative America. Now, at Yale, where their journey began, their relationship is studied as an example of how American identity is constantly evolving. But even as their love story bridged cultures in an academic setting, JD and Usha's bond would face its toughest test in the brutal world of national politics. Could the foundation of understanding they had built withstand the growing political divisions in America? The bright lights of national campaigns put JD and Usha's relationship under intense scrutiny, exposing tensions that Yale had once kept in the background. As JD's political career gained momentum within conservative circles, their marriage became a lightning rod for criticism from all sides. Far-right figures like Nick Fuentes were among the first to attack. His racially charged remarks questioned JD's commitment to conservative values, implying that his marriage to an Indian-American woman made him disloyal to the movement. It was an ironic twist. JD, who had built his political identity around championing working-class struggles, now found himself defending his own family from the very forces that some of his political allies quietly tolerated. At home in Cincinnati, the pressure mounted. Things were tense behind closed doors. Usha's colleagues at Munger, Tolley's and Olson had once seen her as a rising star, but now they watched as she navigated a storm largely on her own. Her legal work on diversity cases seemed at odds with JD's public stance against DEI programs, making her position increasingly difficult. At a heated campaign rally in rural Ohio, where Make America Great Again flags waved alongside anti-immigration banners, Usha maintained her usual poised smile. But those who knew her best could see the subtle changes. Her grip on JD's hand was just a little tighter, her confident stride a little more cautious. As JD's political career gained momentum, the contradictions in their lives piled up. At fundraising dinners, Usha skillfully sidestepped questions about Trump's immigration policies that, had they been in place years ago, might have prevented her own parents from coming to America. Meanwhile, she served traditional Indian dishes to conservative donors who loudly championed the idea of protecting American culture. Their children found themselves at the center of this cultural divide. At school events, whispers followed them. Questions about their mixed heritage murmured behind polite smiles. Conservative media scrutinized family photos, searching for signs of what they called cultural compromise. Liberal critics, on the other hand, openly questioned how Usha could stand by a man whose policies they saw as directly opposing immigrants like her family. The 2024 Republican National Convention put these tensions on full display. When Usha stepped onto the stage to introduce JD, protesters outside held signs demanding racial purity. Inside, she spoke about their love story, about JD learning to cook curry and embracing her family's traditions. Yet the same audience that had just cheered speeches on mass deportation listened in uneasy silence. Social media made every contradiction even louder. When JD defended Trump's questioning of Kamala Harris's racial identity, calling her a chameleon, critics were quick to point out that his own children shared a similar mixed heritage. A journalist bluntly asked, "As a father of biracial children, did those comments give you pause at all?" JD didn't flinch. "They don't give me pause at all. Look, all he said is that Kamala Harris, but the damage was already done." His response sparked another round of debate about the personal cost of political ambition, leaving many to wonder just how much pressure their marriage could withstand. Yet, despite everything, their relationship held firm. Away from the political chaos, their home remained a sanctuary. JD still cooked the Indian dishes his mother-in-law had taught him, and Usha continued her Hindu traditions while supporting JD's Catholic faith. Their children grew up with a deep sense of pride in both sides of their heritage, learning to navigate a world that often tried to put them in a box. But in political circles, the questions remained. Could their marriage, once seen as a symbol of America's diversity, end up as a cautionary tale about the sacrifices politics demands? As JD and Usha Vance step further onto the national stage, their relationship takes on a weight far beyond their personal story. It now serves as a reflection of America's ongoing struggle with identity, power, and the true meaning of unity in diversity. Their love had already survived the pressures of law school, cultural differences, and public scrutiny. But now, they faced their biggest test yet. From Yale dreams to the heart of Washington's power, would their strength be enough to withstand the weight of history? The steps of the Capitol building set the stage for a historic moment unlike any other. While Donald Trump's return to power captured global attention, it was the figures standing just to his left who signaled a deeper shift in Washington. JD Vance, the boy who once watched his mother get handcuffed in Middletown, Ohio, now stood with his right hand raised, taking the oath as Vice President of the United States. Beside him, Usha, dressed in a navy silk sari, stood out against the cold winter backdrop, a symbol of change that even their fiercest critics couldn't ignore. This moment had been set in motion months earlier, during a vice presidential debate that reshaped public perception of JD. In a wood-paneled auditorium at the University of Virginia, he faced off against his Democratic opponent. With Usha's carefully crafted strategies guiding his every move, the two had spent long hours in their Cincinnati home, refining each response, every gesture fine-tuned. Later, the New York Times would credit her legal expertise for his strong performance, acknowledging the undeniable impact she had on his rise. Their ascent sparked national debate about what it truly meant to be American. Conservative commentators who once questioned their marriage now applauded their commitment to family values. Meanwhile, liberal critics, despite their opposition to JD's policies, had to recognize the historic nature of Usha's role. She was now the first Hindu Indian American Second Lady. Life in Washington's inner circles brought subtle yet significant changes. State dinners now featured vegetarian options as a norm. The Naval Observatory, their official residence, saw its first Diwali celebration. Their children did homework in rooms where vice presidents had once shaped history. But their new roles also came with sacrifices. Family dinners were replaced by security briefings. School drop-offs became Secret Service coordinated operations. Even visits from Usha's parents required layers of security protocols just to spend time with their grandchildren. Within the administration, the Vances walked a fine line. JD's focus on working-class struggles sometimes clashed with traditional Republican policies. Usha, with her deep legal expertise, provided insight on constitutional matters but remained publicly silent on controversial issues. In their first 100 days, they wasted no time making an impact. JD's office launched new initiatives to combat rural poverty, using his own experience with addiction as a guiding force. Meanwhile, Usha redefined the role of Second Lady, championing access to higher education for first-generation college students. Beyond domestic policy, their influence extended internationally. Usha's multicultural background made her a unique asset in diplomatic circles. Middle Eastern leaders found common ground with her dietary choices, while European officials saw their family as a reflection of America's evolving identity. As spring settled over Washington, the Vances found a delicate rhythm between public duty and personal life. Sunday afternoons still saw JD attempting to perfect dosas, only now in a historic government kitchen. Their children still said Hindi prayers and Catholic grace, but now the weight of history stood with them. Every policy decision, every speech, every moment in the public eye reflected how far they had come, from Yale's classrooms to the highest levels of American power. But as Usha began to step into her own spotlight, another question emerged. What hidden stories of sacrifice and resilience in Washington would she finally reveal?